Don't take my word for it. The podcast ad model is broken, like your ex on the inside. Before we continue, who am I anyway? Freddy Cruz, founder of Speke Podcasting. My company produces iconic shows for iconic businesses in the Houston area and beyond. And I saw the writing on the wall years ago before I even left the radio world at the end of 2021. And I'm not the only one that says this. There are way too many ads, whether we're talking about third party ads or host read ads that are just like back to back to back to back to back for 5 minutes in a row. You got like 7 minutes of ads in the beginning of something. You start the episode, and then minutes in, you're into more commercials, and then at the very end there's more commercials, and before you know it, you got a 45-minute episode, and a lot of it is ads. A 45-minute episode, and probably 30 to 34 or 5 minutes worth of actual content itself. And it ain't making the podcast industry look good, especially when it comes to connecting our advertisers, which is how we monetize our shows, connecting our advertisers with listeners. Because if listeners are like, this is garbage, I'm changing it. I don't want to hear an insurance company on my true crime podcast, or I don't want to hear this on this, and I don't want to hear 8 minutes worth of commercials when I'm trying to listen to 50 to 60 minutes of whatever podcast genre they're listening to. And so I figure instead of talking about this stuff, instead of just pontificating and bloviating, why not do something about it? So in the fall, this is one of the most exciting things that I'm doing. And I've done a lot of exciting things, but one of my favorite creative adventures of all time is going to be the Speke Originals Network. And I've got with me so far 2 shows, 2 hosts, very different, but we've got a model for these shows that is definitely going to serve listeners and advertisers in the way they deserve to be served. Before I tell you what kinds of show or what these shows are, let me backtrack to why these shows are so unique. And I get it, we're not the only network that does things this way, but this is the network that only I can launch. We're going to have a presenting sponsorship with a name-only mention at the beginning that's going to tease to the very end for a special offer. At the very end of that episode, it's going to be a 30-second ad of the presenting sponsor. So we'll use my company, Speke Podcasting, as an example. This episode is brought to you by Speke Podcasting. Stick around for a sample of XYZ podcast from the Speke Originals Network. The episode happens at the very end. This episode is presented by Speke Podcasting, home of the Speke Originals Network, where you'll hear shows like blankety blank. Here's a sample of that show, or however the host will say it. That's one tier, okay? That's the presenting tier. The second tier, which you are going to hear 40 to 60% of the way into each different podcast episode, is going to be the host-owned tier. And this is where the upside is infinite, and this is how we attract hosts. Speke Podcasting touches none of that revenue. We touch 0%. It is all upside. The host-owned ad is going to be something that is owned by the host. So we've got a host that runs an IT company, and we've got another host that might be launching a product in the coming year or two. And we touch none of those sales. 0. Not a damn thing. And so that 30-second ad is going to play between 40 and 60% of the way through the episode. And then we get to the end, like I said, the presenting tier, followed by the supporting sponsor, which is going to air as the final unit at the very end of each episode. And this is where things for the advertiser don't get tricky, is because they're full season buyouts. So right now we got 2 podcast hosts, 2 different shows, and we're only going to have 4 spots. We got a presenting and a supporting sponsor for one show, and a presenting and a supporting sponsor for another one, unless 2 different brands wanted to buy for the whole season of both shows, in which case I love that. And there is a 10% discount for somebody who wants to sponsor both shows, whether that is the presenting and supporting tier. And so in the fall, we will be launching the Speke Originals Network. It is the network that the podcast industry is going to be so excited to listen to, because these are highly curated shows. We've got a nonviolent true crime show hosted by Chris Richardson called The House of Theft. Chris's story involves his parents. His parents were convicted of stealing $3.8 million in stuff. And when I say stuff, we're talking toys, videos, all the way down to convenience store beverages, just because they could. And he had no idea until the feds raided his house. He grew up in this house, and he and his sister had no idea. And so this podcast, The House of Theft, is going to be told through the eyes of the son who had no idea his parents were hardened criminals. There will be a season 2 and a season 3. We have talked about it. But season 1 is going to feature Chris telling the story on his own. And there will be guest episodes, co-hosted episodes for next year and then in 2028 as well. The second host I'm really excited about. As you know, Speke Podcasting is based in the Houston area, and there is not very much coverage of food outside of the viral Insta vloggers or food writers. And so a food podcast dedicated to the restaurant scene that covers the restaurants who may not get all the love in mainstream media. This show is called Made in House Houston. It is hosted by the one and only Mega McSwain, whose bylines include Dining Out, The Food Network, Texas Monthly, and so many more. She and I go back several years from my previous radio career, and she is a rock star in the food world. And so she has agreed to host season 1 of Made in House Houston, and there will be other seasons covering other cities. But we're starting here at home. We're starting in the Houston area with a food show and with a true crime show. And we are having a blast, not just recording, but editing and producing all the ancillary content that goes with having these shows. And so I cannot wait for these shows to debut. It's looking like late September will be when you can binge listen to The House of Theft, hosted by Chris Richardson, and Made in House Houston, hosted by Mega McSwain. So be sure to follow Speke Podcasting, Speke Podcasting on all the socials. We'll keep you updated. We're going to have an official launch party. It's going to be curated for only a few dozen people, a very private, very intimate party that's going to be happening probably late August, early September. We're going to have a lot of fun with this, and so just follow us for all the updates.